The war that he claimed would have never begun on his watch.
Biden actually pushed for that war to happen. Okay, if you can believe it. Nobody can believe it, but it's one of those things. And now look what happened. Look what's happened to Ukraine. It's a much smaller country. A lot of people are dead. You take a look at it's a whole different world over there. And
3 years, 11 months, 4 days on. Kyiv continues to be battered by Russian drones and missiles. Washington, that once looked confident, has now gone radio silent.
See, I will have the horrible war between Russia and Ukraine settled. It will be done within 24 hours.
On January 20th, 2026, Trump will finish a year in the Oval Office for his second term and another year of the Ukraine war, this time on his watch. The Ukrainians have just one answer for Trump. They want peace.
The main Kyiv message to Trump that we're ready to discuss even controversial plan from you because we need peace. But this peace should be just peace. We don't need peace without justice. That's why we're ready to talk, we're ready to discuss, but we are not ready to capitulate.
Meanwhile, Russia has escalated the conflict further amidst the holidays with drone attacks on Ukraine's capital city. This came perhaps in reaction to Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky's meet with the US President Donald Trump in Florida on Sunday.
With NATO, with Trump's approach, security guarantees, and you see Putin and his team still putting up a fight about specific security guarantees. And then also the US-European relationship needs to get better. And I can put blame on both parties, but Trump's got to work with the Europeans and the Europeans need to work with him. Trump needs to see Putin for what he is. And I don't think he's there yet, which is making the Europeans very nervous and myself nervous as well.
With Trump pushing deal first, guarantees later, and Europe demanding firm security assurances upfront, how will this Western split shape Ukraine policy in 2026? Does it strengthen Putin's hand or force the US to either lock in a serious security package or walk away from the peace talk theater? Amidst all this, Canada has pledged another USD 2.5 billion in economic aid to Ukraine, while Washington mulls its moves to use finance as leverage on Kyiv.
Under President Zelensky's leadership, we have the conditions, the possibility of a just and lasting peace. But that requires a willing Russia. And the barbarism that we saw overnight, the attack on Kyiv, shows just how important it is that we stand with Ukraine during this difficult time, and that we create the conditions for this just and lasting peace and a true reconstruction.
For Zelensky, the bottom line is security guarantees from the US.
У нас буде зустріч з президентом Трампом, будемо говорити саме про ці гарантії. Гарантії безпеки для мене дуже важливі. Ми хочемо, щоб вони були абсолютно зрозумілі. І важливо, коли ми можемо їх мати. Ми це проговорювали із європейськими колегами. Тобто гарантії безпеки повинні бути одночасно з питанням закінчення війни. Тому що ми повинні бути гарантованими в тому, що Росія не почне знову агресію, потрібні сильні гарантії безпеки.
One of the key discussion of the Florida meeting of Zelensky is going to be the 20-point plan of Trump, which can bring a 60 ceasefire for Ukraine. But the question of territorial concessions remains a point of disagreement. Zelensky now suggests a referendum.
If Trump really wants his peace in the Ukraine to happen, I think he really needs to, one, supply those security guarantees, enough so that Putin understands that if he attacks again, it's going to be very painful for him, both economically and as far as support inside the country. Putin needs to be in a situation, he needs to feel as though One misadventure and he could lose power.
We want our citizens and our people back. We want them to be free. What kind of trade it could be here? Of course, if United States are agreed to liberate this land, to force so-called Kiev government to move the mercenaries from the occupied Russian land, it will be a good start for negotiations. Of course, the next thing we need in Russia are guarantees that the Kiev aggression will never be repeated. Of course, I think we have no choice but to run new elections.
The Russians are not falling for Ukraine's referendum bargaining tactics. They have now taken control of Huleipo, the second largest city in the southeast region. President Putin has also reportedly said that Ukraine is not in a hurry to resolve this conflict peacefully, and that the Russian army is fully capable of resolving the issue militarily.
Но сегодня, судя по вашим докладам, судя по темпам, которые мы наблюдаем на линии боевого соприкосновения, наша заинтересованность в выводе украинских воинских формирований из занимаемых ими пока территорий фактически сводится к нулю. По разным совершенно соображениям. И если киевские власти не желают закончить дело миром, мы решим все стоящие перед нами задачи в ходе специальной военной операции вооруженным.
אני רוצה להגיד לך משהו, נתניהו. האחריות היא שלך מתוקף תפקידך. אתה לא יכול לברוח ממנה, אתה לא יכול להנדס אותה כפי שמתאים לך, ואנחנו נוודא שאתה גם תיחקר על כל הפרשיות ותיתן על כך את הדין.
In fact, during 2025, Russian army was going forward, liberating new Ukrainian territories. And the Russian move is very fast. The reason of any victory is, of course, people, because people are who commit war. The reason is because more and more former Ukrainian citizens joining a Russian army and a Russian movement to liberate the Ukrainian land from the puppet regime in Kiev.
With Trump and Putin's second summit nowhere in sight, Zelensky's escapades in Florida seem to be another round of Washington browbeating Kiev into submission. However, Zelensky won't be alone. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu too is headed to Mar-a-Lago, facing a desperate Trump who is keen to take his Gaza peace plan forward. Unlike Ukraine, the Gaza plan has seen a ceasefire under stage 1. However, Netanyahu is now dragging his feet on the second phase that could revamp Gaza Authority, disarm Hamas, and form a new council. Pressure is increasing in Tel Aviv on Netanyahu government. IWHD demands of an independent investigation into the October 7th attacks. However, families of hostages are asking Netanyahu to remain firm on his commitment.
אני עומדת כאן היום לא רק כאימא שנאבקת להשיב את בנה, אלא כמי שנלחמת על מימוש הערכים של המדינה הזו. ערכים שבגינם רני יצא פצוע כדי להגן על המדינה. הוזמנתי להצטרף לטיסתו של ראש הממשלה בנימין נתניהו לארצות הברית. ראש הממשלה נוסע להיפגש עם הנשיא טראמפ.
US wants to form a multinational peace council that can oversee the international stabilization and rebuilding of Gaza. Reports suggest that Egypt, Qatar, UAE, UK, Italy and Germany are expected to oversee this effort, with Trump keen to top in Saudi Arabia's Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman and Turkish President Recep Tayyip Erdogan.
That if the White House succeeds in advancing such a structure, Israel would face increased pressure to scale back military operations and move toward a containment rather than an elimination of Hamas. Hamas must be eliminated and disarmed. And this is a strong concern of my country, the people, that without strong enforcement mechanisms, this framework could allow the Hamas to retain influence and slowly but very surely come back to be a very militant group and have lots of power in Gaza.
Netanyahu, however, is resisting the plan, as he is skeptical about Hamas's actual commitment to the disarmament. The 11-week ceasefire hasn't been a model of success either. With finger-pointing over ceasefire violations and aid blockages, Israel clearly has second thoughts on the peace plan. The problem in Washington this holiday season is no different to last year. The only difference? There are 2 deals on the table, but still no takers.
It does not appear that Putin wants peace. For there to be peace or ceasefire, you need 2 sides to take part in that. And Putin has shown no inclination whatsoever to come to the table. Trump's going to have to come to the understanding that this may not require a diplomatic solution, but a military solution. And what that means is beefing up the Ukraine, showing the Russians, Putin, that he has a heavy price to pay if he wants to keep this up. Because when you look at the situation at face value, he's got a manpower issue, which he's always had since the collapse of the Soviet Union, and now he's got a firepower issue. So if he wants to play this game, then the United States needs to get back behind the West, behind the European countries, and say, we're going to make Putin pay. We're going to make him bleed money, oil, money and treasure.
2026 is going to be a big year for the art of the deal. But the real question is, can Trump win? As a deal is only a victory if there is a peace worth living in. The world is ready, but for those in the crosshairs, the only question that matters is, how much more is the peace going to cost? Will 2026 be any different?